Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Mask Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to Lucha-Masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at Lucha-Masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly.
Welcome to the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happenings in the world. Each week, our team discusses news and events from the past, and we also preview what's to come. We try and cover news from AAA, CMLL, and other top Mexico-based independent wrestling promotions, along with luchador-related news from WWE, AEW, MLW, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, and much more. Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. I'm Miranda Morales. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Podcast, but I don't do this alone. I have two fantastic co-hosts who show me the ways of Lucha Libre, so I'm going to be bringing them on board right now. First off, he is the dashing Dusty Murphy.
Hi, how's it going, Miranda?
Good. I should say making his illustrious return after a week hiatus. The dashing Dusty Murphy.
Yes, back and better than ever.
Very, very happy to hear that. You had a little bit of a sick leave, but that's okay. You're doing much better, which we are thrilled about.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to be back.
Good, yeah. We missed you, man, Brendan. We kept it together, but it was not the same without you. And speaking of Brendan, I got to be bringing in who? Who's next? Brendan Barr is next.
Who?
Yes, that's the Who.
The Who of this show, but that's okay. But we are a trio. We are the trio champion here of the podcast team of. You know what? There are. I'm pretty sure lots of trio podcast networks. So I don't want to declare us the champions yet, because I know that those are some fighting words on a podcast network. As illustrious and as big as this one. But I feel like we got a shot of being.
I'm just going to go ahead and say we are, because if they want to fight us for it, I'd love to have those words.
Self-proclaimed trios champions. Yeah.
Them fighting words. All right. That's a challenge to the rest of the Lucha Central Podcast Network, all of the other very well done, illustrious podcasts out on the network. However, the challenge has been set. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast team is calling out all the other trios. We the champs, and if you want them, come get them.
There it is. I stand by that. Come get them.
That's my best. I think caught off guard with you two just saying, all right, yes, we are the champion and we got him. Speaking of, again, the Lucha Central Podcast Network, this podcast and all of the other podcasts on the network are available on luchacentral.com and all major podcast platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, Podbase Speaker, and now iHeartRadio. So thank you if you are listening to us through iHeartRadio, or maybe you are a user of iHeartRadio and maybe you didn't know that before. Well, now you do. Another way to listen to the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. And speaking of podcasts and podcast streams, we got some great news earlier today from the boss man, Mr. Kevin Kleinrock. He let us know, and this is very unexpected. I think we were all very surprised with this particular news right here, that congratulations to the entire Lucha Central Podcast Network. We are collectively number one in Norway.
Yeah.
So, yes.
You got to be number one somewhere.
Number one in Norway on the iTunes wrestling charts. Thank you to all of the listeners in Norway. It's a huge honor that you have chosen the Lucha Central Podcast Network as your number one network in wrestling podcast.
Yeah, that's a huge honor.
That's amazing.
Wonderful. But we also immediately realized that you probably don't have a lot of knowledge of Norway. I admitted to these guys earlier that my only experience in Norway is through Disney Epcot Center in the Norway Pavilion. That is as close as I've gotten to Norway. I'm not sure either of you gentlemen have any knowledge or experience with Norway or Norwegian ways.
That's as close as I've gotten physically as well. But I do know that one of their number one exports is fish, that they introduced salmon sushi to Japan. And they had a lot of salmon they needed to sell in the 80s. Japan didn't have a whole lot of fish at the time, and so Norway kind of made that overture towards them with a delegation. And that's my main Norway fact, is that they introduced the salmon sushi to Japan.
That's a good fact, though. Oh, my God, that's such a good fact. How did I not know this? And I'm also now blown away. I mean, I've seen very much in American restaurants, you can get salmon sushi or salmon nigiri or whatnot. And it did not cross my mind, and you said it, but it makes complete sense because salmon is not really it's not native to Japan. It's not a fish that they utilize in cooking very often. They got tons of it.
Yes, they do. And so they export a lot of it to Japan, and that's where I think it's their biggest export of the salmon is to Japan. Just one of those random things. Yeah.
There we go. Random trivia for everybody in our audience, except for the fans in Norway who are like, of course we totally knew that.
Yeah, we knew it.
I guarantee you there's a Norwegian fisherman listening to us right now, and he's like, I knew this.
That's okay. I hope it's one day on a Jeopardy question. If I can find this on Jeopardy one day, it will be absolutely worth the while. That's fantastic. Brendan, do you know anything about Norway?
So I, too, have not physically been anywhere near there, nor have I even been to Epcot to see that. But I have experienced the Norwegian metal scene quite a bit. I have friends who are in the local Seattle metal scene. They've introduced me to a bunch of Viking rock bands, and I have made the mistake a couple of times of associating the wrong country with certain bands. Apparently that is a very bad thing to call a Norwegian band a Swedish band and vice versa. So they're very competitive in the metal rock and roll scene.
Interesting.
Yes. I do believe, though, that part makes sense when countries are fairly close enough together and people assume, that they're different or they're the same. Those nuances make a difference. Thinking about all of the Latin American countries out there, I think collectively we support each other, but if misidentified from being from the wrong country, it can kind of irk some. Understand that as well with the difference between Norwegian and Swedish heavy metal bands. There's clear differences, though I'm not aware of them.
I'm sure that someone will be willing to talk to you for hours on end about that. You really want to hear that.
But again, I mean, we are still very honored because we also got a screenshot of this, and the Lucha Central Podcast Network is beating such notable shows as Talk is Jericho, which is listed as number 3, and the Steve Austin Show's number 7. So the fact that, we're beating 2, Hall of Fame world champions, best in the world wrestlers who also have their own podcasts. Lucha Central Podcast Network is beating them in the iTunes wrestling charts in Norway. Again, a very big thank you to everyone listening in Norway. Now, though, Brendan's going to have to learn Norwegian and Spanish. So just another assignment for him.
On the spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really Brendan's forte, though. So that's why he's assigned to this.
I'm pretty sure hello in Norwegian is just hello, so at least you've got that. That's a pretty good start.
There we go. I'm off to an amazing start.
Off to a good start. Well, for anyone who may be a new listener, welcome to the podcast. One thing that we like to do every week is to start off the show by going and exploring the road back to shows. You haven't been around, maybe living in Iraq or away from society for quite a while. There's been a pandemic among us that has been closing down everything from schools to shops to restaurants, and it has, in fact, impacted pro wrestling. So Brendan does a wonderful job every week of letting us know where we are on the road back to shows, and this week he has some...
So we are, for the most part, this is a fairly positive update. The United States and Mexico have been in the process of changing stages, whether that's Mexico's color changes or our number changes. Most of the less densely populated areas have been moving to preparations where they can have more businesses open, they can have more things going on. I just got a notice in the mail today that they're planning on reopening movie theaters at the end of next. Oh, wow. So yeah. Wow. So we've got, things are happening. The U.S. recently opened the borders to sports travel. So there was some speculation that there might be some wrestlers that have been that might be permitted to do that, and seemingly backing that up, there were some American wrestlers that popped up in photos for down in Mexico. I started to say for what, but I'm not sure what the photos were for because people just were happy to put those pictures up and say, look, people are in Mexico. And that was Diamante, Tessa Blanchard, Kiera Hogan, and I've also heard that Selena De Laurenta was hanging around that set too, but I can't confirm that particular one.
Yes, I believe on her Instagram, she did post some pictures of some time she spent in Mexico. I know that she does special photo shoots for her Patreon. But she does have post some sneak peeks on her social media. And then a couple other people have posted corrections as well for other things going on. CMLL has reportedly had a date of October, but what that seems to have been was that was a post from the earthquake. So a lot of people looking for any sort of news found that and didn't check the date on it and were reporting that factually. CMLL has not officially said anything yet, and I will stick by my assertion that the moment AAA is able to host a show anywhere in the metropolitan area, they're going to try and jump all the hoops they can to make it happen.
I think so
at the same time.
I think they're the most likely candidate to come back first in Lucha, or at least in Mexico for Lucha.
Yeah. Arena Puebla has already said that they are not having any empty arena matches. They said first and foremost that this is about the fans and concern for the fans and wrestler safety, but they did also allude to the fact that it's just not financially a very good move for them. So probably a good thing happening for all the wrestlers.
I was surprised how many arenas still don't have running water. When I was doing my research, it said that was going to be an issue going forward, is that these places were built long ago and they're just not set up to have people wash their hands, constantly or whatever. And so that, a lot of some of these arenas may have to be outfitted before shows can come back, and when they'll be allowed to be outfitted and how they can change. And so I think it's going to be interesting going forward, seeing which arenas hold shows and which don't. Yeah. Just out of necessity.
And that's very much a thing that I've been aware of on an outside level. There are certain cultural approaches. Restrooms, I have noticed. I can identify visitors from Mexico and the downtown area based on the way they use my restrooms in the buildings that I work in. And nothing against that, but that tracks with not having running water. They don't use the running water the same way many Americans do, which seems to almost take it for granted.
Very interesting.
And including with updates on the larger scale, Brendan, you also have some updates on some independent promotions that have ran some shows recently and will be running shows over the next few weeks.
Oh, well, I do have that. I have some indie stuff. I do have looking at this notes, I've gone for all the good news, and then in smaller print here, I have a couple of bad news things.
Yeah.
The big one that a lot of people are probably aware of right now is the WWE has had a confirmed COVID case. So that's a little bit of a setback on the road back to shows. They had to cancel a taping earlier. Somehow they managed to get some sort of product on for NXT last night. The SmackDown recording, to the best of my knowledge, still wasn't done, and more wrestlers are now opting to stay at home.
Yeah, I've heard Kevin Owens' name.
Yeah, and they're saying that because he's kind of a locker room leader and this is a new look at this sort of thing, more people may have said that and just not been reported yet. And then we have IWRG had a show. We will give the results from that show in just a second here, but the fallout from that show is that the Mexican government is coming down hard on it. They they pulled the license from the promoter, and they're considering financially penalizing wrestlers that appeared on it.
And do you know why exactly the license was pulled?
From what I have been able to gather, they pulled the license because at no point was the show on that particular date authorized. Now, so there's a little bit of back and forth that I found where IWRG,
like June 7th, and then they said, well, we'll have it the 14th instead, and nobody wrote. Is that the same story you had heard?
That's the same story, that they'd had some level of authorization for one date, and they didn't have it for the next date. But I can't really confirm that. The main reasons that are officially listed and what they've been handing out is that the show was not authorized ahead of time with the precautions in mind, and because the government didn't have oversight on the precautions they were doing, they thought this was a necessary step.
That's huge to get your license
That's a huge
pulled.
step, yeah.
That it may be a while before they're able to get that license back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sends a warning to anybody else that wanted to. I mean, they kind of martyred them to make a warning and an example to other promotions. You know, I know Fantasma allegedly wasn't happy about AAA's empty arena shows, but he just didn't know where they had taken place and couldn't prove anything.
Yeah.
So it seems like this is kind of the first time they could prove it. And not only were they going to go after the wrestlers financially, I think they were asking commissions, like wrestlers who had come in from other places, asked their local commissions to find them as well, which is kind of unusual, I think, in this type of situation.
All of it is, but to the point about this whole segment is we're in very unusual times. So we're kind of feeling out how it's going to go, and I agree that it felt more like because they were able to positively identify a location, time, and people that were involved. That's why this got a lot more harshly looked at than AAA, as you mentioned, because they want to make a statement. They want to make people conscious of the fact that there's still a health risk at this, especially inside the metropolitan Mexico City area, where they're a lot more densely populated than out in the countryside.
And there was also some concern that they had taken like public transportation, and from some of the some of the luchadors had taken public transportation, wasn't there?
I hadn't read that, but from luchadors that I know that work in the area, that's their primary method of getting to most places. Like, driving is not a luxury that a lot of people can afford on whatever their day job is, plus paying for their what amounts to a hobby, of being a pro wrestler, because there's very few people in Mexico that can say they make money full-time wrestling.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It'll be interesting to see how all of this evolves and what wrestling and lucha kind of evolves into with the summer and fall coming on. And
well, the summer, you bring up a good point, is actually good news on that, because Mexico loves to do outdoor shows, which are a lot easier to mitigate a lot of these problems. Social distancing is easier to do. The DTU show that I'm about to talk about did an outdoor show at a ranch, and I mean, in addition to looking absolutely beautiful in all the pictures, it's out in the middle of the sun, which is apparently a very good thing for helping to kill the virus.
Yeah.
and social distance was super easy because there's plenty of dirt to stand in that's not less than 6 feet away from somebody else's.
That's awesome. I would love to go to an outdoor show. I think it'd be more fun. It's interesting. They don't have them very often, at least around here. And, that's the type of thing I would really enjoy.
We a couple of sorry, go ahead, Miranda.
No, say that's probably one thing a lot of at least U.S. based promotions are exploring now as they're evaluating coming back. It's in the best safety measures to have an indoor show, so that way they can do all of the things that Brendan was saying that the DTU show did. They were able to honor social distancing measures a lot easier because you have that outdoor space, meaning you can also have more people, whereas in an indoor venue you have to be more mindful of the space. And it's probably cheaper. Granted, summertime too, in most places it's okay. I'm out here in Arizona where it's about 110 degrees, 15 degrees. So outdoor venue, and also lots of places, I'm sure in the West Coast, Southwest, where it's a challenge to do an outdoor show. I imagine some areas in Mexico as well have a lot of the same terrain, so you have to be strategic about it, whether it's the time of day that you do it, where, all of that. But, it could help outweigh a lot of the safety measures that promotions are going to have to be concerned about for the future.
Yeah, outdoor shows, we a couple of our schools up here have done them, so I've helped with setup, tear down, and other logistics for it. They're very different beast as far as that goes, because setting up and tearing down the ring in particular, you have to get it in the right place without a lot of particular earmarks. If you're going to use chairs, you have to kind of figure out how to get chairs, how to set them all up. And all of these things are things that the building helps make faster. So what is inside the building, a 30 to 60 minute process of getting ring ropes up and chairs set out and all of that pre-match stuff was the better part of our morning. And,
wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's really
so going back to any other updates with the road back to shows?
That seems to be where we're at. We're overall, again, the report is largely positive. We have the two major setbacks with WWE and IWRG, but you have DTU doing a great job. You have the border seeming to open up, where you have the possibility of shows in smaller outlying areas where the contagion risk has already been lowered. So generally, we're looking pretty good. And as a result, we're going to get we have more indie shows this week to talk about. So for the first time, we can have a indie show segment.
Yes, really excited about this. And I know some of it, going back to between good news and bad news, and why I think I'm very anxious to talk about what I think you'll have as your first topic, because we've talked about this offline, and one of the interesting challenges that promotions face when it comes to putting a product on during this time. So I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you go with it, but I'm sure we're going to have a very meaty conversation about it.
Well, yeah, as a result, I was going to talk a little more about the IWRG show. Just gave you quick results on there. They did largely singles matches, one a battle royal style match, and that seems to be for the purposes of more COVID prep. But so you had Atomic Star over Tromba of Eastmen over Aragon, Diosa Quetzal over Fulgor 1, and Puma de Oro won against Yoshika. And then you have Shun Skywalker against a whole bunch of people in the Battle Royal, which is apparently part of their King of the Ring semifinal. Of course, they use the Spanish and call it Rey del Rey. It looked like an exciting event. Unfortunately for me, it happened while I was at work, so I couldn't watch it to give you full results like I can with a couple of these other shows. The highlights seem to be available online. I've seen a couple of gifs, from the usual people. There was a little bit about that the matches, of course, as a result of the IWRG controversy, but all in all, it looked like a positive show, and I hope that these wrestlers don't get get hit too hard for this, because most of them are doing something that they love and are trying to make a living at it, and not doing this for a more sinister.
It's my understanding that IWRG said they would pay the fines for any luchador that was fined.
I believe they did say that, yeah. I didn't see that, but I heard someone else indirectly say it, so I don't want to confirm that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% either, but I thought that's what I had read. So if they do, that would be huge to them and a big help to all those luchadors, obviously.
I agree.
And then, again, another quick, easy one is the DTU show we were referencing earlier that happened on the ranch. You have Grand Cobra over Darius in a pre-show match. Arrow Panther and Blaze won a tag team match against Fight Panther and Samurai Jr. A new to me Brazo team, Brazo Celestial, Brazo Cibernetico, Brazo de Oro Jr. against Blackfire, Kaleth, and Paranoico. I love trying to read some of these names when I...
Luckily, they're in Spanish and not... They're in Spanish and not Norwegian.
Yeah, so I can sound bad in all three languages. So the Brazos came out on top on that one. And then Aborto over Crazy Boy, Cosario Negro Jr., and Chineke in a no-ring match, which I'm told had more of a cinematic style to it. But again, I didn't get to see this. The one match that I've seen highlights from, though, was the Ultimo Guerrero camouflage. Really fun. Mm-hmm. I don't know if either of you saw any of this match.
I haven't yet.
Not yet. I was going to ask, I believe there was some changes to some of the announced talent when this was first announced. I think there was and I forget exactly who, but I know they had advertised.
I believe it was Tejano was in the main event.
Yes, it was Tejano in camouflage instead of Ultimo Guerrero, which, for those of you who play the politics game at home, that's an interesting thing, because CMLL and AAA do not really let outside people have their talent on the same shows as the other performers. I don't know which way it goes. I know that CMLL pulled wrestlers out of a show that I was going to go to because AAA was there, but I don't know if AAA would do the same thing.
CMLL that doesn't want to play ball, but that could be political propaganda.
I'm not willing to point the finger at anybody right now, because I love both companies, and I want
me too.
Well, and you never know. That's very much up in the air as far as, depending on who you the other aspects of the show, who was running it, lots of other elements that could have, had a play in it, or at least what the story is about it. So, I think it's hard to tell.
But this is why I found it interesting. Replacing a AAA guy with a CMLL guy makes it sound like whatever factors they have going on were changing very rapidly. So, and that's a thing that we can go forward with on the, because I learned a little bit about this with the Chaos show, which is the big one that has a lot of interesting story behind it. I'll start with the initial one. When I was talking with people about it, I noticed that this Chaos group that has a show out of Monterey had AAA branding on their posters and even in the arena on the show. And when I asked someone who knows a lot about Chaos about that, he explained to me that in order to get on television, they have to have deals with the television station. And if the television station deals with either AAA or CMLL, they have to then collaborate with that group in order to be on the television station.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, I found that to be very
interesting. The interdynamics and politics of Libre never cease to be interesting. I mean, there's just so much that goes on. I'm going to kind of touch on that in this week in Lucha history a little bit. But yeah, just the politics and the dynamics and the pride in their product.
I appreciate how it's a lot. I believe it's a lot more open, out in the open than it is. And even just that process that Brendan was describing, I think that if that was something that was happening here in the U.S., it would be so much more either low-key or under the rug than as they do it in Mexico, where it's just an understood aspect of running a promotion. And so I personally can appreciate the transparency of that, because at least you know that just what all the associations mean and what it takes to actually get on TV in Mexico.
Yeah, I found that interesting. Again, to your point, in the United States, that's not how it works. Like, if you are running a smaller show and you want to get on TV, you have to make a deal with the TV stations, and they might or might not have another wrestling product that they're more interested in having, and they won't tell you. They'll just let you negotiate with them, and maybe let you on and maybe not. But yeah, so the last roundup that I have, we kind of soft led into is Chaos. They had their second anniversary show. Well, I'm going to say it up front here. They had half of their second anniversary show.
Yes, dun dun dun.
I did a lot more research on this one because I have a friend that I could talk to about it. This is a Monterrey promotion, so they like to mix Monterrey wrestlers with more widely known. So you're going to see that a lot more in the names that you hear on this card. We didn't see a lot of the bigger names on this half of the card. We did get a couple, but we had the first match was a mixed tag match with Commander and Baby Love winning against Origin, and it was all of these matches are fast-paced matches, but this one started off super fast. The intros and everything really actually flowed. Like, one of the things I have in my notes here is about the COVID prep. So they had a similar setup to the AAA secret shows, where you're in the kind of all black room and you have the guys with the full-on hazmat suits. But unlike the AAA shows where, as Conan put it, the microphone got more camera time than anybody else, they clipped it. They clipped all that prep part of it, and they went. So every match began with a kind of a weird combination of video footage and entrance, and it lasted maybe 30 seconds. Which this is a company that likes to do high productions. This was their second year anniversary show, so they normally would have had like more pageantry and fireworks. But I think in order to keep the flow of the matches going and not slow things down with having to sanitize everything or worry about fireworks in this tiny little room, they went with more cinematic overlapping video while they're doing an entrance that they kind of blended together. It was very neat.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, well, you may get a chance to see it. Decide you want to watch the second half of the show. We'll get to that in just a second. You had a ladies match next, ladies titles match. This is where you got one of the bigger names on there, because you had Sexy Dulce, who people in the United States will know as Sexy Star from Lucha Underground, as the ladies champion coming into this match. Diosa Quetzal, and then you had was the next one, and you had an exotico by the name of Dulce Canela, who was also challenging for it. Awesome match. It was Sexy Star, Dulce Sexy, however you want to call her, has not lost a step. She looked really good in this. But the local talent, Dulce Canela, came out on top with the belt at the end of it, and that was kind of the big happy story for this one. That's where Chaos was putting that picture up right away, and everybody seemed to be kind of celebrating that online, which was really cool. And then you had another match. This was a bunch of people. Charo Negro, Oro Negro, Origin, Puma de Oro, and Commander. So that's five, I believe. Five-way match. As you can imagine, with five luchadors in the ring and the general looseness of lucha libre rules, there was people flying all over the place. There were topes, over-the-top rope dives that were absolutely terrifying. And finally, you had a suplex off the second rope with Charo, and then Charo Negro was able to capitalize on that for a win. And then you have a multi-team tag team match. These have all been one falls, was also one fall, but because I didn't speak enough Spanish yet, I didn't know, and I was curious to see if they would do an elimination, but they kind of threw me for a loop, and the first pin, which didn't look that spectacular, was the one that won it. You had Vasco Jr. and Rico Rodriguez, Los Delinquentes, that looks like they're trying to be delinquents. of some kind, if that's the right word, Miranda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Delinquent.
And then the Charo Negro and Oro Negro came back for this match. They were another tag team, and then you had AAA's Dark Cuervo and Dark Escoria. Again, you had kind of more of a AAA feel to this, probably because Cuervo and Escoria were there, where you had a little more hardcore style going. They didn't bust out the cookie sheets, but they did have a lot of.
Is it a hardcore match? Is that the definition of a hardcore match, especially in Mexico? If there's no cookies, I don't know.
Well,
yeah, you got to have the cookie sheets. I love them.
It's definitely a AAA thing. It's definitely if you are expecting to see so when I describe a style as being more AAA, I will qualify if there were cookie sheets there or not, so that people know to set their expectations appropriately.
Fair enough.
So again, they were brawling all over the place. You had outside interference, which allowed the champs to retain the championship, which is why again I was a little confused at first, but it's a great way to keep bad guys who are clearly trying to very bad. If they're calling themselves I felt that it fit the character that I was being, and hopefully that means that we can see in more chaos shows we can see people chasing to try and capture that title away from those guys and defend it more honorably, because that looks like what they're trying to set up there. And then they started to promote the next match, and the footage ran for a little bit, and then Roberto Figueroa pops in the middle of that, said something that was way too fast for me to understand, but apparently it was tune in next week and check out our Facebook channel for more information. And the broadcast ended.
Wow.
So here's
yeah.
Right?
I can't imagine how upset people were while it was going on, the bait and switch moment.
Yeah. So didn't know the news ahead of time and are relying on us on that. What happened here is Chaos promised us a full card. The remaining card was supposed to have Hijo did Dr. Wagner Jr., Galeno Del Mar, Fresaro Jr., and Mr. 450 in a match, Cuervo and Baby Love in a match, Blue Demon Jr., Dr. Wagner, and Daga in a match.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder maybe realize real quick, like, hey, I know we advertised the full card, but want to make more money, everyone? Okay, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah. So exactly. Like those muches definitely had a lot of people excited. I was super excited about that main event. So they Facebook Live feeds, they had Figueroa and Conan Big there, and they were basically cutting a promo where Conan Big said that he should have been on the show anyway, because those who aren't familiar with Conan Big, he's a very popular wrestler in the Monterrey area. He's more of an entertainer / wrestler. He's got a TV show and a rap album, things of that nature. But very popular in this very particular region, has filled up a lot of shows. So he was saying that he thought at the second anniversary of the Chaos promotion was big enough that he should have been there. And Figueroa said, well, I mean, if you think that's the case, why don't we advertise adding you as a bonus match for next week if we sell enough extra subscriptions to the cast. So that's more or less what they're trying to do, is hold up that really big Blue Jr. Dr. Wagner Jr. Daga match with adding in a Conan Big.
Makes sense.
It really does. For me, the funny thing, because of how little they were charging stream, it was only I paid.
Yeah, it's like $5.
It was so because I had to do international things. It came out to 150 pesos for me, so not a lot of money.
Yeah,
so I would have
$2.
Yeah, I would have gladly bought this and set aside time on both weeks ahead of time, and I think a lot of people would have, because that undercard was still good.
That's what I had heard from most people. Sorry.
Do you know the cost of the show is actually down night two, or is it still going to be 100 pesos for the for anyone new who decided to pick up the streaming, because from what I understand, anyone who bought the show this past week, their login or link information is still going to be valid, so there's no additional fees you have to pay. But for anyone new on, I was just curious if a change in cost.
So I haven't heard that. I haven't had a chance to had the ability to find that. I was trying to look around and see if they were maybe charging less. But they haven't even told me in my email and that I ordered it with yet for sure that my date will happen. So this feels very last second
still evolving.
To me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you most likely you're still going to have to pay that 100 pesos if you're just now going to subscribe.
Well, and to imagine what would that be like if a promotion did that in the U.S. You know, how upset from what you mentioned too. The chat were livid. The audience, a lot of people were very upset.
Yeah.
And card. I mean, that's some really sketchy business practice.
Yeah, I refer to it as extra carny. I mean, I'll love to the NWA who's embracing the carny heritage of pro wrestling. But that's kind of the dark side of it. Is the carnivals have always been about parting the people from their money, and that's absolutely what this move feels like. Is we didn't get enough money, so we're going to do another stunt to do it. And the fact that by me having to apologize about carny culture tells you how Americans kind of feel about the feeling deceived for their money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, again, though, it's very different business practices, and it did seem like once there was an announcement for night 2, and even the card for night 2 is really hyped up, that people will calm down a little bit. So, you know, I don't hope that a lot of other companies use that type of tactic, but this is also some uncharted territory with more online streaming, the result of Lucha Libre within the world of COVID as well. So I feel like that this is just part of the result of having to navigate uncharted territory.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID part of it is an interesting thing. There's been a lot of discussion about how to properly monetize events. The online events are not doing as well as the promoters need to ensure that all the talent get paid.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, if you can't even pay the talent, then clearly not making money on. There was a blog article about how they would rather. Some people would rather just put the money directly into the hands of wrestlers at this point because they don't know what all is involved by just supporting it, just supporting blankly a promotion. You look at like IWRG or Chaos here. You don't know if you're going to get the carpet pulled out from under you if you do this, or you know. So I mean, yeah, the cultures are different, but there's definitely a feeling where the promoters still need to make the money, and they're trying to figure out how to make it happen in a way that works for everybody. And I mean, I felt for starters, I felt that 100 pesos is a very generous price to start with. Maybe if they had charged that extra 50, like I had to pay because I'm an American and I had to pay a service fee, they might have made a little extra to help cover some of those costs and not had to make such an obviously last minute, borderline desperate look to get a few more sales on it.
I think that's how it came off, is just that borderline desperate instead of strategic.
Yeah, and that's to your point from earlier, an American promotion did that, they would come off as a lot more desperate, and people would be openly mocking them for it. They wouldn't even be upset. They would just mocking the promotion for looking desperate and trying to find ways to make money. And I don't know if that's better or worse. To me, it's worse, but.
Okay. Well, we're really excited that we were able to talk much more about the independent Lucha Libre scene in Mexico with more shows coming up. There is one scheduled for this Saturday. Lucha Libre Vanguardia is having a show on the 20th. And this was one, if anyone who listened to a few weeks back in some of our fun news, the Invisible Man will be at Lucha Libre Vanguardia this weekend. So something to watch, if that even makes sense.
Yeah.
You have to be looking to not see. Otherwise, it's just somebody telling you it happened.
My head hurts from that.
Also, I have found that there's a show which the Wagner family is trying to run on Sunday. So if I can find information on how to watch that, we will have more on the Chaos show because I'll watch that. And I will try and one of us will try and catch the Vanguardia show. And if the Wagner family lets us know how to watch it in America, we'll watch that. So we should have a good indie roundup again next week, too.
It's exciting. It's nice to have some fresh wrestling.
Absolutely. And listeners of this can find event information at luchacentral.com. As many events that luchacentral.com their hands on, they will provide reviews. So it's under the event review tab. But again, even on the homepage, there's always updates and reviews on not only the big events happening in the U.S. And Mexico, but also as many independent. So luchacentral.com and check out the event review tab. Now, we're going to kick it off to Denise Salcedo with this week's Lucha Central.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central, with a look at all of the great shows available this week on the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Monday, it's a brand new masked cast with Dos Hermanos Lucha. The brothers are back with their latest advice on how to build the ultimate Lucha Libre mask collection, including what Facebook groups can really help you up your game. Tuesday, it's Masks, Mats, and Mayhem, the show that brings you back into and behind the scenes of Lucha Underground. This week on the show, more behind-the-scenes secrets are revealed from two of the show's Day One luchadores. Plus, the gang discusses the current success of former Lucha Underground stars, Karrion Kross and El Hijo del Fantasma, and takes a look back at Season 1, Episode 6. Plus, this Friday, look for a bonus episode of the MMM show focused on Pride Month, including a special interview with former Lucha Underground and current AEW star, Sonny Kiss. Also on Tuesday, brand new series Wrestle Boss with Fabi Chulo debuts on its regular night with a live call-in show covering pro wrestling and MMA from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific. Then, each Wednesday, the show will be available for download on podcast platforms. The first episode is up now and features interviews with former CMLL, Ring of Honor, and Lucha Underground star Ricky Reyes, Bellator fighter Rick Hahn, and Combate America SVP Mike Aframowitz. This week's guests will include former XPW and Wrestling Society X star and current owner and operator of the Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy, Joey Chaos. With SPW graduates in nearly every major promotion at this point, there is a lot to talk about. Don't miss WrestleBoss Live on Tuesday night and in podcast format on Wednesday. We've also got more live recordings for you on Wednesday as Spanish series La Mesa de los Márgaros brings you their unique style of news and comedy along with special guests. Watch as they record their episode on Facebook Live and then download the episode Thursdays. Also on Thursday, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco with special guests PWR Training Academy graduate and AEW star Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Papo and Gabe talk with Jack about his training at the Academy, his time in the NorCal indie scene, and his signing with AEW. On Friday, we've got the number one Lucha Libre show on the U.S. charts, Lucha Central Weekly, and the number one show wrestling-related, period, on the Mexico iTunes wrestling charts. Lucha Central Weekly en Español, with Lucha Libre slowly returning to Mexico and shows this past weekend from both DTU and IWRG, plus luchadores all over WWE programming these days. We've got 2 packed shows for you. Be sure to subscribe and follow all of your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms. And please be sure to give a rating and review to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, This is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
And as always, a huge thank you to Denise Salcedo, who does Lucha Central Central, giving you the highlights and sneak peeks of what to expect on all of the shows on the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And we continue to grow new shows a week, new content, and there is truly something for everyone on the Lucha Central Podcast Network. So make sure to subscribe, rate, give us some feedback, give us some comments, let us know what you're liking, because that's what these shows are all about. Maybe not all about. I would say we definitely are big on user and listener feedback. I'm sure other shows are just doing them, and they are fantastic at it, though. So I don't want to speak for all of the podcasts, but I know we really do want to know your feedback and your comments. So, Dashing Dusty, you have this week's WWE news, some roundup. Take it slow if you need to, but I feel like you're just going to go back at it.
Yeah, well, on Backlash this last Sunday, the 14th, we saw Andrade versus Apollo Crews, the title match rematch. It was moved to the pre-show, and these guys only got like a 7-minute match with very little build. It felt a little bit like the cursed frozen yogurt from The Simpsons. We saw Andrade get that rematch for the United States title, but it was on the pre-show. Kevin Owens was on commentary to further Selena's stable, but the match was only 7 minutes and change with little builder recognition. Like, there are some positives mixed in with all these small discouragements. It was a much better match than its spot on the pre-show. Again, despite having little build between the Memorial Day Raw and now, there's that 3-way match for the title opportunity. But it really was a great match. The later involvement of Angel Garza and Kevin Owens kept it really fresh, kept their story moving forward to Monday Night Raw. And then on Monday night, we got Kevin Owens versus Angel Garza for the first wrestling match of the show. And just as things kind of get going in the ring, Idolo! We hear Andrade's music drop, and he's coming out to return the favor last night's run-in, and he's going to distract and antagonize Angel and, holler at him, get back in the ring. And Kevin Owens gets the obvious attack off of the distraction. And he kind of has a brilliant moment where he grabs Garza's tearaway pants and then throws them in his face to kind of tie him up to hit the stunner. But Garza was smart. He just grabbed the pants and got out of the ring as fast as he could. And they immediately start arguing on the outside, and Zelina gets mad and storms off. And the match goes on. Andrade later tries to distract Owens, but Owens hits the stunner, wins the match, and then Zelina comes back out and kind of admonishes them both for fighting between themselves when they need to fight together, and see some turmoil in the group. And so we don't really know where this is headed yet, and it'll be interesting to see. And then we had the Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins segment. And this is where I get to kind of pull out my crystal ball again. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you, Brendan, if you thought there's any chance this could lead to Dominic joining the Monday Night Messiah, and here we are. And
I feel super smart, and that's just not true. I made this joke about Denise being as smart as me last week. I felt terrible about it right away because I'm not usually this smart. And here I am, accidentally making the right prediction. So, folks, with the scorecards, this is probably the last time I'm going to be right. Just be aware of that.
Who knows, though? I think that they wouldn't be alluding to this, especially Seth constantly talking about Dominic, if that wasn't going to be in the cards at some point. And it just sounds so good that you can't help but almost want to see it happen.
So true.
Then that is in fact why I had thought of the idea in the first place. Is Miranda, you'd put on the idea that Seth is really good for young up and coming wrestlers. He's in that spot where he's really elevating. So seeing with somebody that can do that is just such an enticing idea.
Yeah, and again, it's what Seth is known for. He really built the playbook of what it's like to turn your back on your brothers, on your family, to focus on your own career and win champion. How poetic would that be, and also help spread his message of being a messiah? That's the thought process at least when I think about it, Messiah is very biblical, this idea of preaching, and he exudes that in his character, in his promos, even in his attire. And what is a Messiah without followers, without a philosophy that he's to convert someone of that caliber like Dominic, who is part of a rich culture and history of Lucha Libre, to this dark side? Fantastic storytelling.
Yeah.
I agree so much. This is the most exciting thing for me on Raw right now. Is the Rey Mysterio, Seth Rollins, and Dominic, and Rey's eye is looking much better. He doesn't have the big metal eye patch anymore, just his mask over the eye. And he showed up to, do the interview via satellite, as they called it. And but that meant he got to see the whole thing. Dominic he runs out and gives Seth this big clothesline, and Seth sold it like it, crippled him. I mean, it was so good. And then he throws in steps, and then Murphy and Theory kind of corner him, get him painted in that corner, and he just jumps over him, runs out into the crowd. Ray got to see the whole thing, and it was a really cool moment that you don't often get to see, and it was interesting in how they were able to involve Ray despite his injury. And I really liked the juxtaposition of everybody in this one, and how they got everybody there despite the social distancing. And it was just, the whole thing was really entertaining for me. So do you guys think this leads to Dominic joining Seth, or do you think this is all going to be like he's going to try to get in good with Seth and then turn on him? What do you think is going to come of it?
This actually leads a question I have for you, which is, with all of the changes, the documented changes to WWE's backstage on Raw, do you think this segment is going to keep going this strong? Are they going to keep doing the big things like this?
That's kind of what I was going to tie into next, is with Paul Heyman leaving, I'm just not sure. I think that in a position with Seth, and Dominic's had big spots before with Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez, and so WWE must feel pretty good about putting him on camera with their big guys, their top guys. And so I feel like Rey Mysterio's spot and Seth's spot kind of makes this one safe, but so many other people like Andrade and Humberto Carrillo, I'm just not sure what this means for them going forward. Thankfully, Ray's got that name, and the Ray-Dominic dynamic is good. Garza has so much unbridled personality and charisma that I think he's, got a fairly safe spot. And allegedly, that's part of my next thing, is that he's, one of Vince's favorite wrestlers right now, and Vince sees him as the next Eddie Guerrero. And which is a common, if you wear a mask, you're the next Rey Mysterio. If you don't, you're the next Eddie Guerrero. But I think that somebody like Garza truly has the charisma and the ability and the bilinguality to make himself a star both here and in Mexico for WWE in a way that maybe nobody except Eddie or Ray. In fact, not just maybe, but I think he has the ability to surpass what anybody else has done except them. And he's so young that maybe he could surpass them too, if they would. He's really, they like to talk about Vince and grab the brass ring. And I feel like that Garza has really grabbed the brass ring lately. Ever since he's been called up, everything he does has just been magic.
There's a lot of positive things we can say about Garza in particular, but I wanna just kind of drop this again, this little hint. We're gonna have a lot to say about him next too. So yes. We can come circle back to a lot of these thoughts, but it was a great news article this week that Vince referred to him as a young Eddie Guerrero, which in Vince McMahon mind is a huge compliment. There's a lot of discussion about what that might mean to us normal people, but again, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I did have the same doubts as you about the people in that spot, just having Andrade get moved to the pre-match already, and then only getting 7 minutes makes me feel like they don't have the faith that they want to move forward with him with the new backstage team in as prominent as a role as they were giving him. But these next couple of weeks are really going to be telling.
I agree.
I absolutely agree. And there was a lot of speculation about Paul Heyman helping elevate in his favorites, like even on Apollo Crews, and that's how he got to the point of that. Andrade being another one, I believe, that was speculated as a Paul Heyman favorite. And so to not have that presence backstage, who knows? I do understand why they to the creative team, since they're filming everything out of the performance center, it just makes sense. And also if they're doing, whether it's cost saving measures or just streamlining processes, it absolutely makes sense to why they did it. But I think there was at least a lot of news and speculation as to Paul Heyman just being a big advocate for people that he thought had that factor.
He's always been that way. I mean, I've mentioned this in one of the earlier podcasts. First time I ever saw Rey Mysterio was on ECW, and Eddie Guerrero too. I mean, like they got their start before WCW on ECW with Paul Heyman, and
WCW was infamous for taking a lot of those in order to really create the Cruiserweight division. So ECW really was the true foundation for the exposure of Lucha Libre, I think, in the U.S.
But also to that, in that era, you had the ECW use of those characters versus both the WCW and WWE/F, where in ECW you have Rey Mysterio and Psicosis main eventing a show and the fans going crazy for it. In WCW and WWF, you have, or E if they were at E at the time, you have them in the middle of the card, and you usually have them in kind of more of a gimmicky match, and you have announcers talking about the main event while this really amazing match is going on.
Yeah, they're just not taken as seriously.
Yeah, so it is a little concerning because also it's my feeling, from what I understand and know, that Bruce Pritchard thinks a lot in the same alignment and tone as Vince McMahon. And so we also know that Vince just has a different ideology when it comes to who he believes are stars, even though the news, and I think that's why it was good that we brought up Vince McMahon allegedly being a big fan of Angel Garza, because traditionally we view, or we have heard, that he is much more of a fan of the big guys. There's a reason why Drew McIntyre is your WWE champion. The big, burly, tough guys. Why he's been such a fan of Lesnar for so many years. But also one thing I do think he truly does appreciate is a good character, good charisma. And Angel Garza does have that. So I do think that Vince will see aspects of that in people regardless of size. However, my understanding, again, this is all alleged, but I think as fans, we've also just been taught or seen Vince really just gravitate more towards guys who are a bigger frame and stature, regardless of wrestling ability. And that leaves a lot of people, a lot of luchadors lost in the mix. And where you had someone like Paul Heyman who truly did appreciate talent, of course, of attitude, charisma, all these things, but he could see even little nuances, and he knew, as he says, how to minimize any accentuate the positives, minimize any negatives. And he was always great about that. So that, I think, is going to be one thing that will impact the roster in a negative way. These little things that he pull out of people, we're not going to have the opportunity to see that as much.
I won't say definitely we're not going to. There is still the outside hope, because they will have him backstage, that he will at least be able to talk with them backstage. And much like we were talking about with Lindsay last week, where he said that he went out there to make the most of every opportunity that they're giving him. Every time they put him on TV, if you have Paul Heyman there backstage to help them accentuate the positives and look at the opportunities they have and draw that out, we may still get some of that out of these people. And hopefully the WWE sees that work and does something with it. But the very worst, we could have 2 shows with very talented guys that are doing matches from underneath that I still don't mind watching.
Yeah. I hope they could keep their relationship with Paul, because you like an advice, a mentor type relationship, because he's kind of famous for that too, taking on a very close role with the people he works with like that. And I think his just experience and advice for these guys, even if they're not in the same place that they were, could be huge and would serve them until they can be on top.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping that if he stays on the shows and is a backstage presence, he will be there to keep them with a kind of an upward momentum mental, because that's what they'll need. Nobody likes to hear the boss doesn't believe in you, and that often will affect your performance. But if somebody else says, who cares, this is what you're going to do to look amazing, and everybody else is going to believe, then you're going to be positive in that same manner, like they're coaching.
And it's also going to, if they kind of reevaluate or shake things up, a lot of the talent that Paul was pushing were younger, fresher guys. And, like that may be, with the COVID changes and everything, it may be interesting to see how that goes too. These younger, fresher guys may be more willing to stick around than some of the Kevin Owenses and the Roman Reigns and people like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects their placement going forward.
Yeah, it will be very interesting what happens. I always get sort of a dark pleasure out of the political goings on behind the scenes in the WWE in particular, because news like this comes out, and I'm much more interested in watching the show. Just
I know
how it gets treated.
How does it change? Yeah. What's the? I mean, and I think that the viewership shows that. I think that this last Raw, Monday's Raw, was the most watched since the Raw after WrestleMania. And so, I mean, there is interest from fans there, like when news comes out, that there's been a shakeup. They want to see things. They want to see what's fresh and different and, if anything, and at least to contrast and compare. Even if they don't like it, they want to see the difference.
Absolutely. We've talked quite a bit about Raw, but WWE has another product there. Did you want to talk to us about that, Dusty?
Sure, yeah. We had Santos Escobar. I mean, we had it feels weird not to call him Fantasma, right? But we had Santos Escobar. And he came out and he gave a speech that was actually really great about who he was and where he came from. Talked about his dad. And that his dad was Fantasma, and that his dad had always told him that he was not meant to be a luchador. He was meant to be a leader of men. And that was what he was here in WWE to do, was to lead the new leaders and kind of take things over.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible spot. They looked like $1 million, and he comes out with the title over his shoulder. I mean, like a rock star with this guitar. It just looked so good.
Yeah, they look glorious.
And then Drake Maverick interrupts and all of this. And now he's the underdog who fought for his job. And he's going up against the golden son of a luchador who could have been a star anywhere. Like he just came WWE. So it brings on this interesting new wrinkle to the dynamic of their story and the kind of finale of the Cruiserweight Championship. And I mean, it really kind of, I like where they're going with this. And Drake Maverick has just been golden. I mean, everything he's touched lately has been good. And I'm really excited to see where this goes and if it involves Jordan Devlin in any way, when and if he can come back. And I mean, there's so much they could do with this that's so new. And so, I mean,
I just really I really just love the dynamic they have with Drake Maverick. I think it was easy for us to think that his story was over when he signed a new contract with NXT. But the fact that they're able to continue this and exactly have this underdog mentality, but in a whole new way, I really appreciate that storytelling now, because it's still fresh. You still support him and get behind him. And yeah, El Legado del Fantasma, or the Legacy of Fantasma, I really like that title. Yeah, I love that name.
I love that name. I love all the implications of that, because that means that El Fantasma, who has a lot of power in Mexico, is invoked indirectly.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of possible implications that you can really work with this. we were discussing a little bit the logo that they popped up behind really got me excited. Like that really.
I love that logo.
In addition to my personal things about wondering if someone who I know did that, that's a whole other thing. I just thought that it really added a big feel to it. Like they had, in addition to the
it's official.
It's a big deal.
It reminds me in a way of the New Japan logo, where it's almost like beyond. It's not just a character logo or a stable logo. Even, I mean, it feels like a brand.
Yeah, exactly.
It's put together. And that is what gives me hope that the company is going to really put some attention to this stable. It doesn't feel hokey. It doesn't feel unauthentic. It feels like a true menace, a faction, a force that is going to run wild in NXT. And even just the attires, the whole look is very cool. And I feel like that's just very smart decision making on whoever has involvement of that. I do hope that the talent have involvement in it, but I'm sure there's also people within NXT that had some involvement in the creation of this and the styling, whether it was the name, the logo, all of it. I'm very thrilled, and I'm a big fan of this so far.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that I could be bigger on Fantasma in NXT, and then they unveiled what this full faction is looking like and what they're about, and it reached a new level of excitement for me.
Yeah, and also speaking of NXT, just a quick note, Karrion Kross, he was not on this week, but he is going to be facing Bronson Reed next week. Brendan and I talked about promo that happened between Scarlett Bordeaux and Adam Cole, and we thought we were going to get some continuance of that. However, there was some other drama that unfolded regarding the North American Championship and then also the NXT Championship. However, I think it's safe to say that Karrion Kross is just going to be another opportunity for him to just show his dominance and probably put the fear of God in Adam.
Yeah, I feel like even so in that spot, he did address that Karrion Kross was coming after the title. He then, in typical Adam Cole fashion, brushed it off as no big deal, but he still addressed it. So that means still on the mind. So I feel like we may get a chance to see Kross against some of the other members of the Undisputed Era in the build up to that, and then I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely excited. And again, he's having such a strong presence in NXT that it does make it so intriguing to watch. NXT continues to be a fantastic product.
It really does. It's a must-see every week.
Yeah.
Well, they had such little time to do yesterday's episode, and they still got it out in time, and that Fantasma was, it was so good. I watched it 2 or 3 times back over Freebound and watched it. It was so good, and they looked like, assassins or something coming out there, and just the product that NXT consistently putting out lately has been great, and it's amazing that it features some of our Santos Escobar now, and now Karrion Kross. It's just really exciting that we have that available to us every week in America.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
So we're going to change gears a little bit here. I'm going to introduce to the next segment because I want Miranda to have a little more to say on this one. AEW didn't do a lot with the Lucha content again, but we had an oversight that I feel that is interesting to me, because we always talk about how good these guys are, but we never really think of them because they're so consistent and so good. And that's Proud and Powerful, Santana, and are always on, and they're always doing good stuff. And Miranda, when we were discussing the show, had a few extra thoughts on that. So I wanted to just talk straight to you and hear what you have to say.
I appreciate that. I don't always get my own intro, so that was a lovely job, Brendan. Lovely job. The announcer doesn't always get to be announced, so I appreciate that. And yeah, so last week I made a running joke about a few Latin presence in AEW. The week before now was Matt Hardy making some jokes about Mofongo, which I still stand were fairly funny, as a fan of Mofongo is still delicious. But also during that show, Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz, gave a beating to Orange Cassidy. I mean, they put a good beating on him. And it made me realize that, as Brendan was saying, Santana and Ortiz have been a really strong, consistent presence in AEW since last August. They debuted back in August at All Out when they attacked the Lucha Brothers and I believe the Young Bucks. And then in October, they ended up aligning with Chris Jericho to form their faction, the Inner Circle. And so I do feel like in some ways, as entertaining as the Inner Circle is, I think that sometimes they get overshadowed with, say, Sammy Guevara, who's doing hilarious stuff, being chased by horses and go-karts. Mm-hmm. And then you have a Jake Hager, who's a beast, Chris Jericho, who's a huge talker. But Santana Ortiz has something that's really unique, where they're fantastic wrestlers, but also can be hilarious and menacing at the snap of a finger. And I feel like that's something that is really valuable, but also it can be incredibly difficult to pull off, where they can be campy one minute and they kick your ass the other. And I really admire and love that about them. And of course, I mean, for all transparency's sake, I cannot, I mean, they're my Puerto Rican brothers, you know, I'm not gonna, that's a huge attachment. When they did that Puerto Rican gift basket, any kind of reference to Puerto Rico always makes my heart sing a bit, because again, too, it's funny. It's things that I can eat too culturally, but it doesn't feel campy. It doesn't feel offensive. It feels just very authentic. I appreciate that.
It's their little touches.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I really wanted to give that shout out to them, because I feel like the Inner Circle has been very good for their careers, but I also eventually want to see them pull away and go back to maybe more of tag team action, as far as maybe chasing the belts. I think for sure in the future, they are going to be, I foresee it 100%. And it alludes to maybe some of my own men right now in the tag team division, that the focus is away from actual tag teams. But, you know, that's another topic for another time. But if you're looking for a strong, dominant team to be your champions, they really don't have very far to look for with Santana and Ortiz.
Truly.
They have such a nice, robust group of people that they can pull on in AEW for that tag team division. The Lucha Brothers haven't been doing a lot on television right now because of transportation issues mostly.
Right.
So, but they are still a strong tag. Santana and Ortiz are a strong tag team, so they can pull that. I feel like they're doing what they're doing right now because it carries more of the roster. But to the point, the fact that Santana and Ortiz can still be a tag team that's featured in the main event picture and be consistently on television without and in a highly elevated and respected spot, without it feeling like, why aren't they chasing the tag team? It's feeling so natural that they are there and doing cool things that says a lot about their ability to elevate themselves. And I mean, they're almost to the point where they don't need the belts to be a big deal in that.
Very true.
AEW right
that
now.
is true. They're like the seasoning in Inner Circle. Like, I mean, it's like when you cook and the seasoning makes the dish. Like, Inner Circle would be good, but
that's what we call
Santana,
adobo.
Exactly.
It's the adobo. They're the adobo of the Inner Circle.
I hope they appreciate
that special taste. Yeah. It wouldn't be half as good without them. Like, you know what I mean?
True.
Like, you need them there, and it's their unique blend that really, I mean, makes it special, and it allows them to highlight other people. And I mean, they are really in a special and unique spot, and I can't wait to see, like you say, when they get those titles. That's going to be deeply exciting.
Yes. And so this was just a moment in recognition of an incredibly strong tag team, and one that again, like Brendan said, they're consistent, so maybe they don't get as much recognition, but I do think that it is something that because of that, it is a good thing to recognize them on that part. And also, it does showcase a little bit of what opportunity could lie beyond they had their first match in AAA back last September. And I don't know if there was going to be future plans until a lot of things happened within the world, because I know there was, some partnership, whether it was official or unofficial, with AEW and AAA, but they ended up wrestling there last September. And so if we do see more interaction between AAA and AEW in the future, you probably know they're going to be making an appearance.
Well, they're just such an easy fit. They naturally switch back and forth between American and Lucha Libre styles so well and so fluidly, and the fans react to them down there just as much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, they have a very strong reaction to it. So, but we gotta keep the show rolling, and what other way to do it? But we gotta talk about a team, of course, that Santana and Ortiz have faced, not only in AEW but in other promotions. This week's MLW anthology was based on the Lucha Brothers. Brendan, kind of give us your thoughts about this week's anthology. We haven't seen any Lucha Libre in a few weeks, but this is a great way for MLW to bring it back.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm really loving the anthology series, and I knew it was only a matter of time. I wasn't sure if we were going to get a Lucha Brothers one or if we were going to get Pentagon by himself or both.
Hopefully both.
I mean, I'm still holding out for both. But we got and this episode really showed the kind of early American roots of the Lucha Brothers, because the very first match we got was Pentagon against Phoenix, and Pentagon was being presented by Selena De La Renta, and the kind of the storyline of this was the two of them were putting on such an amazing match that she winds up signing Phoenix by the end of it, and the Lucha Brothers are kind of, I don't know the timing on it. They play it off like they're being, obviously they probably were doing things elsewhere in the indies, but I
think it was the first episode of Fusion too, so that might have been part of it, storyline for the show.
It's very early in the Fusion line, if not the very first episode, and really far back as far as MLW history goes. I guess they have history all the way back to the 80s and 90s, but I mean, it's not recent. It's not. They weren't already indie darlings that everybody was exploding to see on every show. They were probably not even done with Lucha Underground at this point. So like, we hadn't seen a lot of what they could become. But I love that match, and I love the storyline that was happening in that.
It was crazy. I tell you what I loved about it was that the fans didn't really cheer Pentagon or Phoenix. They cheered the moves. Like every time something amazing happened, they just went wild. I mean, they could not have been more hot for this match. But
and it was a beautiful way. Like, you could really tell the fans just loved it. And I think that's the beauty of Lucha Libre too, is that there's an art form to it that as a fan you don't experience it live. I think whole different aspect.
Oh man,
because you see the body move in ways you never thought that it could, and even just the teamwork that they have to do. I really love seeing the individual match. That just watching them together as a team is fun, but to see them wrestle against each other is something completely different. I mean, you could see how they had each other's cards, the entire time, and that's because you literally know that person better than almost anybody else. So that way you can predict and foresee what they're going to do next. So I really love the balance of the tag match, but also their individual match.
Well, yeah, so that does bring us to the other match that they gave us, which is the Lucha Brothers winning the MLW tag titles in a three-way elimination style match. So it's not just first fall wins. It was you have to survive the first fall and then get the second fall. Yeah, and that was also an exciting match. And again, this time they were very clearly being rooted for. It wasn't. They were still excited by the spot.
Oh yeah.
It was the fans were very much into the Lucha Brothers winning.
100%. Yeah, they were so hot for the Lucha Brothers. Nobody else was even close.
Well, I mean, you had the dirty blondes in there, and the stud stable has a history all the way back to 80s Memphis of being really hated hated faction, so there was no way the fans were rooting for them. You did have, I found that dynamic interesting too, because you had the Lucha Brothers, who were a much more established and popular tag team at that time. You had the Dirty Blondes, who are your over-the-top heel bad guys, and
right.
you have the they called themselves, it was two younger guys who were trying to really they were making a name, and had they won, that would have been the Cinderella story that would have launched them in MLW story at the very least, if not around the world. But
the
crowd
would have rioted. They were so hot for Lucha Bros. I mean, like, you could just feel it in the air of the match, like, as it was going on. That, you know, Lucha Bros were going to win. You just wanted to see how it was going to happen. Like, I can't even remember the last time I saw a big televised match like that, where this whole crowd was so hot for somebody. It was really special. And I wasn't a huge fan of all the near falls. I felt that there was you know, it kind of made it feel a little bit like a Harlem Globetrotters moment. But other than that, you know, like, it was really exciting, and I loved it.
It was a good show. And it's a good episode. I once again thank you to MLW for putting up your older matches for us to watch. I enjoy having the ability to relive older matches or recontextualize these older matches.
All right. Well, our next news is one on our side, but I think Brendan will be able to do a wonderful job with this story. We do have some luchador passings that we would like to acknowledge and honor here on the show.
So there were a number, which made researching all of these people very difficult, and I apologize that some of you are not going to get the level of recognition that I feel you deserve. But yes, so this week we had Chacho Herodes, who was an CMLL performer all the way from the 70s. Aries El Guerrero, who was one of the Pueblo performers. Those who are less familiar with the way that works is some people stay in-house and perform out of one arena, and he earned a reputation that way.
Yeah, he was recognizable from Arena Puebla.
Yeah. Esther Leon de Moreno, who was the mother of Oriental and several luchadoras, Esther, Alda, Cynthia, Rossi, and also Esther. She got a lot of recognition this week because, in addition to being married to a luchador, having a family of luchadors, she essentially built the Arena Azteca Budokan with her husband. So a lot of the wrestlers were very, very sad to see her go, and there was a lot of recognition there. La Sombra Vengadora had made it to 89 years old. He was a movie star first, but like many of the movie stars that worked as a luchador on, he transitioned to being a wrestler. It's a very recognizable face, or mask, I should say.
Yeah.
And then there were several others. Cyborg, Sangre Guerrera, Pilatos, Super Portos, Salvaje, I believe.
Yeah. Salvaje.
Tamario won, and a couple more that happened while I was making my notes and didn't have time to actually even get written down. So it was a very sad week. A lot of really big, respectable names unfortunately passing. I would like to stress that not all of these are COVID cases, so we're not trying to portray them as COVID cases. Many of these people were just older people who had other medical problems. But it's hard to not see a large group like this and wonder if maybe the current situation in the world didn't play some role.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these people, I would like to once again offer my condolences on their passing, my support to their families, and my thanks for them being either performers or supporters of performers that have made a difference in the lives of the world of lucha. And we're going to go to me reading this once again. So if you are listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it's time to do it. LuchaCentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you can get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would happen in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. A place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. On top of all of this, it's free. LuchaCentral.com, your centralized place for all things.
And now we have This Week in Lucha Libre History with, again, the Dash.
Okay, it's time for This Week in Lucha History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera for more information and a lot of times videos. You definitely those videos. I chose the Padrissimo show from June the 17th, 2000. This was the first, to my knowledge, the only time the CMLL and AAA worked together on a major or a televised show. This was a request of Televisa, the television network. And if you don't know, Televisa is a big deal in Mexico. They're a network, and at that time, they owned most of the affiliates and a lot of radio stations, too. So they had major pull. And even though one company or the other has always refused to work any inter-promotional angles, Televisa stepped in, and they made it happen in 2000 as a special Father's Day show on the Padrissimo, which was like a variety show, music and entertainment. And what was interesting to me about this show was that it wasn't AAA versus CMLL. To make the show happen politically, they agreed to team the Rudos of both groups and the Technicos of both promotions together so that you had interpromotional Rudo versus Technico matches. And the match that really stood out to me was the 8-man tag match. It had Brazo de Plata, El Rayo de Jalisco Jr., La Parca Jr. at the time, who later became La Parca, and Octagon, defeating Abismo Negro, Cybernetico, and P-Rose Jr. with Shocker. And back in the VHS tape trading days, I actually had a video of this show, and I always liked this match. I mean, where could you see this kind of lineup and mixed? And I was a huge Shocker fan, so that's why I chose this particular match. He could really go back then. I know a lot of us had those Mil Percente Guapo shirts. I've still got a couple of mine. And, I mean, like, this is the Mil Percente Guapo, you know, the Shocker that you love, that you remember. And so I highly recommend we'll check this out on YouTube.
That's on the Lucha Central YouTube channel as well?
I believe it is.
Fantastic.
And,
awesome.
How about you, Brendan?
Well, Miranda was right and predicted very accurately that I was going to choose the Dr. Wagner and Connect match. So this week I chose June 18th, 2004, Dr. Wagner Jr. winning the UWA World Championship from Connect. And yes, it's because it's two of my all-time favorite luchadors in a match, so of course that drew the eye right away. This was at Arena Mexico in Mexico City with all of the pomp and circumstance and pageantry. Everything about this match had me electrified from the there was a little bit of Wagner's overconfidence, which eventually morphs into him going completely off the rails and blatantly cheating, and then posing and trying to mock Connect this whole way, and the fans were eating that up. Both of these guys, this was in 2004, so both of these guys were big names, well established, but they still could really go, and they're everything about it. It started off with a nice technical pace. They were doing matching arm bars and wrist locks, grappling on the mat until it started to break down a little more. And as Wagner started going more toward low blows, punches, and kicks, Connect started going more with high flying and generally, more flashy but still very technical moves that were bigger impact. And then just when you think that Connect is going to pull this out, you have a little distraction on the outside of the ring. A chain gets passed in, and then Dr. Wagner does something while the referee isn't looking. I don't know. I will never accuse him of cheating, but it sure is an awful lot like cheating.
Not him, surely.
Right. Surely never. Such an honorable man.
Which sets up more matches. So there were actually a couple more matches that are in this week in Lucha Libre history, because clearly the fans are going to want to see more of those two after that kind of a finish. So go on the YouTube channels and check out all of these matches, because they're all great. I have no problem giving away the ending of this one, because it sets up like 2 or 3 more matches that are all just as good. What did you go with, Miranda?
I picked something of a little bit more recent memory. It's June 16th, 2019, just last summer. Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix won the AAA World Tag Team Championships after beating the Young Bucks at Verano de Escándalo. And the reason why I picked this is, one, I thought the match was great. It actually is only about 13 minutes long, so not a very long match, but very intense, very fast-paced. And it really just shows that what the evolution, I think, of AEW, especially Dynamite, has gone through in, something that used to be so rare, and like seeing these two teams face to face, now is something that as an American audience we get to see a lot more frequently. So it's definitely been just a way of just remembering that summer, because there was a lot of back and forth with the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. A lot of that started back in February of last year, when they made the announcement of AEW doing Double or Nothing, and the Young Bucks were there to promote the event, and the Lucha Brothers came out, and that's when we first got the sign of, we're going to get some Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks, and they did not disappoint. There was a lot of back and forth. They made a surprise appearance at AEW, and that later on in February, and then it was a lot of, where are we going to see them next? What's going to happen? And then at AAA's Rey de Reyes in March, the Young Bucks defeated the Lucha Brothers for the AAA Tag Team Champions, and
which was surprising at the time.
Yes, at the time it was surprising.
I said some Spanish curse words at that point.
But it also made sense, and at the time, because AEW didn't have any championships, it made sense too to leverage that partner AAA, so that you had something that they were fighting for, even though the American audience wasn't that. It wasn't maybe that popular or well known for the American. It was at least something that they could fight for. So after Double or Nothing, this was then the opportunity for the Lucha Brothers to win them back and have them return home. So this was really the kind of the finale in a whole summer that involved the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks going back and forth. And again, it was a great match, a ref bump towards the end that impact on the 3 count. But again, the chemistry in this match was just phenomenal. It was very fun to watch. And for me, even the timing, I know that there's some Lucha Libre matches that go for a long time and it's still very entertaining. I appreciated that this was succinct and straight to the point. And I think the AAA Tag Team Championships did its job over the course of last summer to really help tell a story between these two teams.
I love that happened, and like to your point, adding some value to that pay-per-view with belts and something to fight over was a phenomenal idea. I even though I was upset with the Lucha Brothers winning the titles, I had that bittersweet pill that was going to be the central storyline for that whole summer. So it was good stuff there. And I have a question. I don't remember for sure. Was that Aubrey that took the bump in that match that you were referencing, or was that a different ref?
Oh, no. This was actually during the actual match. And not in the AEW match.
Right. Okay. That's why I wasn't there. I just have.
Yeah, and that was I blended a lot of this together. I didn't necessarily talk about the actual match from Verano de Escándalo. I kind of told more of the story, and again, that's just me because I as you know, I called out Brendan on him being such a Dr. Wagner Jr. fan, and if it's, he was a lot on as well. He had several moments throughout this week, so I wasn't surprised that you picked one. But for me, when I'm looking at a particular day, I'm always thinking about the story and the backstory. And I know that you missed it last week, but when I picked Fabi and Mari Apache for last week's episode, it was because I was fascinated by the storyline between them. So I'm a little bit more inclined to pick matches based off of the story, but I also like how matches help tell the story. And kind of in a parallel to last week too, how that match was between Fabi and Mari was the end of their story at that time. This match felt like the end of their story, at least for a while as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a good match, and I do appreciate that you enjoy the story, and that is a throughput on it. So thank you.
Yes, the story's all I got. So that's what I'm going with. But we are going to turn next into a short spot by one of our partners, the.com.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Thank you to thechairshot.com for the commercial. We try to use our head here. We always try and intelligently bring you wrestling news and not use our heads to block chairs, as that's Mick Foley has taught us that lesson.
No es bueno.
So we're going to move over to talking about Impact. Didn't have a lot to talk about, but Miranda, you said you might have some news for us.
Yes, just a press release from Impact Wrestling earlier this week in which they announced they were renewing their broadcast partnership with Mexico MVS TV. This is from MVS Comunicaciones. They've been working, Impact Wrestling has been working with MVS TV since 2018, and that's when Impact was starting to be shown on their channel. And so Impact Wrestling has a fairly strong presence in Mexico. And so it was just a news item that I thought was very with filming. Impact Wrestling is one of the few national promotions that are still providing new content, new weekly shows, but also at the same time, not a huge lucha libre, luchador presence as well. They used to in the past when we were talking about Santana Ortiz, the Lucha Brothers, they've all had a strong presence and run at Impact Wrestling, and they have utilized luchadors in the past when they've done tours in Mexico. They did one not too long ago. So it is something that Impact has a strong fold in, but it's just really an announcement stating that they're going to continue their broadcasting partnership with Mexico's MVS TV. Alejandro Vasquez Vela Duhaut stated that Impact Wrestling has been a tremendous hit with our viewers throughout the years. It's also played a major role in bolstering the presence of MVS TV, helping them make a mark as a global channel brand. So Impact is happy, MVS TV is happy. And so it's just another great avenue for Impact Wrestling to be shown on a national level. So hopefully once travel restrictions lift and there's more opportunity out there, they can continue to have shows and partner with promotions and also have a strong luchador and lucha libre presence, because one thing that I believe that Impact has been very underrated in is their storytelling. And I do feel like that has grown tremendously over the past few years, especially once they transition from TNA to Impact Wrestling. And then you also have, someone as Tessa Blanchard, who's still their Impact World Champion. I mean, Tessa has some deep ties within Mexico and wrestling in Mexico. Daga as well, with Impact Wrestling and his presence in Mexico. Taya. So there is a lot of crossover with their stars as well. And if they continue to utilize them in the way that they are, it only shows just a lot of potential for more eyes in Mexico to come on Impact Wrestling.
So I have to throw out a name there because he was kind enough to talk to us. Willie Mack also.
Definitely,
yeah. So I want to... Since he was nice enough to talk to us, I'm going to keep throwing his name out there.
Willie Mack had a hilarious segment this week on Impact Wrestling. You need to watch it. That's all I have to say. Willie Mack's promo or video package. He's teaming up with a tag team called the Deaners, and you would wonder what Willie Mack and the Deaners have in common, but they make it work. You even get to see some work from Willie Mack, and he imitates a very well-known wrestler as well.
And does an amazing job. Yes.
So good. Just watch Willie Mack on Impact this week. You will not be disappointed.
Excellent.
Yes, but absolutely. They have a lot of stacked talent in there. And again, I mean, all of the people that we mentioned have been able to shine with Impact Wrestling. So congratulations to them on their continued partnership with MTV. And also, again, as we end the show, we always like to end on a lighter note. Brendan has a really great story on some cleanup that happened in Juarez and who actually was there to help.
So things have been a little dicey around in the world, but the takeaway from that is that the community in Juarez went out into the streets and started cleaning up after a lot of that stuff was going on. And the pictures that were taken were of several of the area wrestlers, including Pagano, who is probably the most well-known to the majority of us, just helping out. Like they weren't, none of them were wearing, I don't think they were even wearing their own branded T-shirts. None of them were wearing masks or the makeup in Pagano's case. They were just out there participating and being part of the community.
Street clothes.
And that is one of the reasons why Lucha Libre has a draw to me, is that it is much more rooted in the communities, like we were alluding to earlier with the Monterrey community. They gather around these people because they're members of their own community, and so the bonds are strong that way. So seeing these people that you wouldn't see an American performer, not turning that into a photo op opportunity. They would absolutely go out there, but if someone stuck a camera in their face, they would probably cut a promo or put up their
Very, very true. And I think that's, again, a cultural aspect. I'm sure we've talked about it before, about this idea of kayfabe and how different it is in Lucha Libre culture, where it really never goes off. And now in American wrestling, the lines are so much more blurred because you have social media, you have all of these curtains being pulled. But part of the tradition of Lucha Libre is that you are almost always on. So even anytime a camera's out there, you're informed. But the fact that they took time to be part of the community and help clean up also just shows how much that community means to them, and knowing that it's important to almost lead by example.
Yeah, and again, they like you were talking about, they want to be part of the community. They're not separate from it. They acknowledge these people and want to be connected to it, I guess is the best term for it. So yeah, I love this story, and I love seeing the pictures. It just made me so happy, and was a nice positive note at a period of time where things weren't looking especially positive in the world. So I really enjoyed that.
Well, listeners, we've made it to the end of another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out luchacentral.com, which is your place for all news related to Lucha Libre. There, as before, you can find This Day in Lucha Libre, event reviews, updates on just everything that's happening both in Mexico but also around the world of pro wrestling, like WWE, AEW, MLW, Impact, all of the big promotion news is posted there daily. You can also find Lucha Central on social media, Lucha Central at Facebook, on Facebook and Instagram at Lucha, and then you can find us on Twitter at Lucha Central Com. Don't forget the com on Twitter. And of course, Lucha Central has their own YouTube page. You can find it directly on YouTube, or you can also find it on Lucha.com and click there. But as we mentioned, lots of great matches, interviews, content available at the click of your mouse. And while you're online, you can follow us on social media. Dusty, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, Or you can find me on Facebook. There's a few Dusty Murphys, but as long as you found the one wearing a Caristico mask, you found me.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am on Instagram and Twitter, and as always, I am way less active on Instagram. You are welcome to join me over there, but I'm much more conversational on Twitter. Both of them are 321 T-shirt guy, and also on Twitter, I will take messages for Miranda.
Yes, I am not on Twitter, ergo why you send any messages to the T-shirt guy on Twitter. But I am on Instagram and Facebook at the hashtag Miranda, hashtag spelled out. Feel free to send us a message on social media through either Lucha Central or our media accounts. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know your thoughts on any of the topics that we've talked about this week or topics you think we should cover in the future. Also, don't forget this show, as well as many of the other shows on the Lucha Central Podcast Network, can be found on various streaming services like Spotify, Podbay, iTunes, and now iHeartRadio. So please rate, subscribe, review, all of those things we would greatly appreciate. And one last shout out, we are still looking trios names. So if you have an idea for us on any trios names so that we can be the proper trios champion. I mean, we've already beginning of the show, I mean, we are the self-proclaimed trios champion, Lucha Central Podcast Network. However, every good trios needs solid names. So feel free to suggest any names to us through social media. And again, luchacentral.com for all of your news in Lucha Libre. Thank you so much for listening to us this week. We will be back next week.
Sácalo del ring, déjale la win, comete la del sonar.